You have a career plan, a financial plan, even a vacation plan. But do you have a plan for your health? Without one, you're leaving your wellness to chance. Today, we are breaking down what a wellness plan is, why you need one, and how to start building yours right now. Welcome to WellWaveNOW, your portal for actionable wellness insights. We, Brett Grice, Dr. Bob Levine, and me, Tim Daniels, are your wellness catalysts, committed to elevating your health, enhancing your functionality, and optimizing your performance at every life stage. WellWaveNOW, where timeless wisdom lights your wellness path.
Hey, I got to tell you, I'm really excited today because this is one of the most important shows we've ever done. This topic is just so critical for people. Anyway, that's just want to throw that in there.
No, I appreciate that, Dr. Bob. And it's my pleasure to introduce today's expert, our very own Tim Daniels. So Tim has planned and overseen the care for elderly, running a multi-state, a home care agency. He's also has a background in consulting and project management, bringing a structured approach to the wellness planning. He also has experience of a D1 athlete and martial arts at some of the highest level. So he really understands how the body can thrive, heal itself, and perform, making him the perfect guide for today's conversation on building a wellness plan. So thanks, Tim, for being our expert today, and let's dive in. So let's start with the basics. Tell us about what wellness plan management is. Give us those basics.
Yeah, thanks. So good to be here with you guys in this capacity and really dive into this a little bit. So little bit. So what is a wellness plan? It's more, step back a little bit for a second here. People look at their lives and they say, most of them say, I've got to have a financial plan. The plan to be able, how do I get young? How do I pay for my college, pay for my home, pay, things of that nature, Bob. That little Bob, little tangent here as we get into this. Bob always caught me in that little Midwest phrase, and so now I always realize I'm saying it, but I go ahead and say it now because it's still a good.
Pretty good because you don't get through the whole thing until you realize it, like right in the middle. A little bit
pattern interruption. He's doing pattern interruption on you, Tim.
Exactly. Right. Pretty soon it's going to be like we won't even know you're saying it. Go ahead.
And people even do vacation planning. Where am I going to spend my vacation at? How do I pay for that? Where do I want to go next year? On that. They may even do a little family planning and lay that out. But one of the key things that I found over time and even looked at for myself for a long time is, are they planning out their own wellness, their own health? And most people are not. And we'll talk a little bit about they're doing aspects of it and look at it, but they're not truly doing, a wellness or a wellness plan for themselves. So what is a wellness plan? It's a structured approach with goals, with the activities, with the scheduling of it to do your best to achieve the health and wellness that you want in your life. And it applies to more, and so it's not just health. When I say people will do aspects of it, they'll say, look, I've got a plan around where I want to be healthy, or I want to eat right, or I want to exercise. That's just a component. True wellness involves those things, your health, your fitness, but it's also your mental performance. And as Dr. Bob has taught me so much in the past couple of years that I've known Dr. Bob, it involves your happiness. So, and because that really impacts your life, it impacts your health and your wellness. So how do you plan for your happiness? So that's what it is in general, Brett.
Tim, it warms my heart that you're including how do you plan for your happiness. I love that. Thank you.
But Tim, what was the aha moment for you to say that's how it should be structured? Because everything you're saying seems like, wow, that's absolutely how you should approach your wellness. So what was your aha moment?
Two things kind of came, well, three things kind of came together for me, all over a period of a couple of years. One, I think, as we mentioned a couple of times, and our guest next week, maybe caught, he said, maybe like you, Tim, I've gone off, must have looked at me and said, you're not quite as fit as you should be right now, Tim. He said, your wellness, your fitness has gone off and on. But, so I was a 126-pound collegiate wrestler, and probably in my 40s, late 40s, I had gotten to be close to over 250 pounds. So I had doubled that weight. And that's what I was doing, the taking care of people in the home care world. And I saw how that was impacting, how things like that, things that could have been avoidable, either lessen the impact they were facing, or could have avoided the impact of what they were facing, they weren't doing. So that started me thinking, hey, look, I really got to start doing something from that perspective. Number two, though, I had progressed on, and I was doing some work. We've talked about here a number of times that one of my specializations is in pulse electromagnetic field therapy and some devices that they're beautiful for maintaining health and wellness. And I had supporting that, enabling that, and I had supplied that to some retired athletes. And talk to them about, hey, this you can get back to working out, and because it helps with your recovery. And this really help with your nutrition because it improves that flow at the capillary level, so distribution and uptake. And they would laugh and they would say, well, my back is so messed up, I can barely get on a recumbent bike. So what's the right type of exercise for me? What can I do? And I'll say, I'm 60 years old now and I'm eating I'm eating the same things I ate when I was 30. What's the right thing for me now? So that put my mind to work. What had I done? But then also see the need for that help to really help people plan out. So these were people who had many of them, like they play for those pro teams. They've got a trainer, they've got a doctor, a team doctor, they've got people to work off them in their supplementation. They may have hired a sports psychologist, so they've got all that around them. And then number two, I looked at it and said, well, how do I help them solve this problem outside of that? And that's where it got back over into the elderly care world. What we did for them, had to do for them, was we did a care plan. And that was meant to say, what do you have to do to care for this individual? What are they experiencing? Do they need meal planning? Do they need meal prep? Do they need assistance walking? Do they need assistance getting to the doctor? What type? How do you help them socialize and keep them happy in life, Bob? And so I said, look, and then so the aha moment then came. I put this all together and said, that's all focused on care. But what if you took those elements and you switched them and said, Dr. Bob likes to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Well, Dr. Bob really at his age really should be eating 29 grams of protein per meal to affect his muscle mass because it stop the sarcopenia. If you flipped all those components from care to progress, I'm glad I got you laughing now, Dr. Bob. From care to progress, then you got a wellness plan. And so, and you can structure it that way. So that's where it all came together for me, Brett, and started applying it to people.
Yeah, I love that you made the correlation between, career planning, financial planning, even planning for your family, but no one's really put the emphasis, except for the professional athletes or a high performing athlete. They obviously have a plan, right? Because they've got to stay in their very best conditioning as possible to really perform at the top of their game. Dr. Bob?
Thanks, Greg. You could say that professional athletes have a wellness plan management system while they're playing, but I think once they're done, they don't have it anymore, and that gets them into trouble, which is where Tim's been working on that for a long time in terms of helping some of these professional athletes. But the average person, obviously, most people, when you look at the health statistics in our country, we have big problems in terms of overweight and obesity and the drugs and the pharmaceuticals and all these ill health conditions that people have. There's obviously a big missing link. That's why I said this is probably one of the most important sessions we've ever done.
Yeah. So walk us through what are the core elements for a strong wellness plan.
So what you do, so the elements, one of the core elements or core ones are one is what do you want to achieve and then you look at is it realistic? Because there's several categories. You could say, I want to be a super ager. So what is a super ager? A super ager is someone who at any age, but they typically say if it's 80, 90 or whatever, that they perform like somebody decades younger. So, hey, and both mentally and physically. So I want to do that. To some people, they say, oh, hey, I don't want to live that long. You would think that everybody does, but not everybody does. They say, look, I know I saw what happened with my parents, my grandparents there. And sometimes you can change this philosophy a little bit. But that I'm about to get into, they would say, look, I don't want to be around where I'm the only one left out of my high school class and nobody to share memories with. So 76 years might be enough for me. How you can change that philosophy? It's that gets into the mental and the happiness portion of it. Well, can't you make new friends? Does it always have to be always be around somebody your own age, et cetera? Let me finish one other thought, Bob, and I'll come back to you. So number one is, so there's several categories you could be in this, and what's the right goal you want? Super ager, living optimally. Maybe someone's got Parkinson's. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've got to be confined to a wheelchair. So how do I really work hard to live optimally like that? Many of our wellness heroes have taken through the challenges that they have, and so I can live optimally with this condition. So one key component starts with what do you want to achieve? The other key component that starts with what's the plan? But let's get that baseline. How do you baseline yourself? And then we'll come at it between there. Go ahead, Bob. You're on mute, Bob.
That's really a good strategy, staying on mute. It gives me about 5 seconds to figure out what the heck I wanted to say. But one of the things that I wanted to say is I love what you're saying, Tim. And the way I interact with my clients is that I talk about future visioning, and that's exactly what you're talking about. What are the results that you want to produce? Another thing I wanted to say, which I just remember now as I'm speaking, is I'm admitting that I'm remembering something right now. People who say, maybe 76 is enough, they're already in trouble health wise. See, the thing is, to me, it's all about quality of life. If you're 95 years old and you're out there, walking 10 miles or, and with biking and you're mentally sharp, I mean, what the heck? Why not? Right. And if, all your friends around you are passing away and you're the last one left and you're graduating high school class, well, you gotta, get with younger people and meet them. But no, I think it's quality of life is really critical. Who wants to live a lousy quality of life? Anyway, that's what leads people, I think, to saying, I don't really need to live that long. It's enough is enough. They're already feeling like they're on the way out.
Yeah, I think it's good. I agree, but I'll tweak that a little bit. Number one, you guys should know where I'm heading now. I'm heading to Genesis. What's it? 663 was six. Now I may need some peptides for my brain myself. It's either Genesis 63 or Genesis 36, whatever. But there's one point there where it says, "I want my spirit will not contend with man for more than 120 years." So I always look at it. To me, that's the lifespan, and I think from what I've seen.
In the Old Testament, people lived to be like 900 or something.
Yeah, but then they said at this point, that was before, and it said, I'm kind of tired of my paraphrase. I'm kind of tired of all the stuff I've got to put up with it. People live that 900 years now. So it's 120 years, and I'm capping it at that. And look, the ages, they didn't happen immediately, but over time, that's what I've kind of got to. But and now I'll also tie one fact into that is that's why with some of these players that are the super agers, I also call it my Moses plan. Because you then go look at Moses. Moses lived to be 120 years old. On the last day, he climbed the mountain, and he could still climb the mountain. It's just God told him, "Hey, you're not going over. This is it for you." But at 120, he could still climb the mountain. But it's that very fact. So and I think there's one thing, I forget the woman's name, but there was something I saw her recently where they thought she had lived to be 122, but they really couldn't completely document that was the case. Look around, you see people living to 118, 119, 120, but not really beyond that. So then it does get back to me as to then what's the health span? Can you get there, and can you get there with the mind and body that you want to get there with? Where I'll go back to the tweaking. There's somebody put in there. Yes, somebody put it in there. It is 6'3", so I didn't reverse it. And then I gave the New International Version. Thanks to our audience member on that. Appreciate that one. But when I was 33, I had a mentor named Malcolm Brown, who unfortunately just died here. Maybe January of last year. And he was also I worked for him, and he worked for me. We played golf together, and just really had a great time. Malcolm retired. He was much older than me. Malcolm retired and moved to Mexico. It changed my whole mentality as to, do I really want to be here? I can't enjoy this so much, and I'm ready to pick up and move. So that's what happens to. I think that happens to a lot of people as their friends die. They move away. They kind of say, "I've got to had enough." But it gets back to your point, Bob. And this is the tweak a little bit. To me, that's then to say, how can you help them continue to have a fresh outlook? There are still new people to meet of whatever age. There's still, if you're healthy and you can move around, there's still new activities where you can do. You've been through these changes before in your life. How do you just make yourself resilient to handle those things and move forward? And then you can get back on that path to say, maybe I do want to live beyond 76 if I'm healthy.
So back to planning though for wellness. Thank you for covering what all goes into that. But what happens if someone doesn't have a plan?
Well, you take a look, and we didn't. And Bob took me back off on the track, but I'm going to do President Trump weave and come back. So let me get the other elements. I want to make sure that
This
people
is not a political show.
have the element, the most of the, at least most of the elements. So what goes in? We started with, you got to have your future vision and you set your goals. So you do your baseline. But what are you looking at across the board? You're looking at not only, you're looking at your health, you're looking at your fitness. You want to understand, what you want to look at your mental aspects. How do you want your brain to perform? How elastic do you want it to be? You want to look at your habit. You want to look at your social connections. You want to say, so how important you want to say socially what I want to be, how do I want my social life to be over time? What are the connections I could be in there? So it's a full aspect. So it's not just a fitness plan. It's not just a dietary approach. It's not just an exercise plan. It's all of those things, plus looking at where you want to be mentally, where you want to be socially, and then laying out what you need to do to achieve that and to maintain those over time. Now, go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, one of the other things that I think is really challenging is how do people get high quality, accurate information about what they should even be doing?
Right.
I mean, it's just, there's so many different ways of approaching wellness, and some of them aren't as good as others, if I say that. So how do people know where to get information from even and what they should be doing? Are there supplements they should be taking? What kind of exercise should they be getting? There's just so many questions.
They tune into WellWaveNOW, Bob.
Well, well, yeah, we have all those prior shows that cover all kinds of really cool topics. So that's for sure. And it's a great resource of information. People need information like that, and perhaps other information. But we've had all kinds of people, from supplements to exercise. And in fact, we did like 8 shows on movement snacks or exercise snacks. What would you call it?
Exercise as medicine.
Yes, movement snacking was one of those. My wife. That's the only podcast my wife would listen to because she liked it, the movement snacking, and but it stuck with her, and she's doing movement snacking now.
That's great. No, that was fine. I was just joking around because I love the name movement snacking. That was pretty hilarious.
Right. Yeah. But back to Breck's point, and then to yours. So what happens if people don't plan on this? Well, number one, they get the loneliness aspect. If they haven't really worked on their social connections, they say, boy, I want to move to Florida and be on the beach with Dr. Bob, but they haven't decided what they're going to do down there, how they're going to interact. So they get down there and they're lonely. If they go to Arizona with Breck, they can go out and play golf year round, as long as they get up there in the summer, get up at 5 a.m. to do it, night golf before the heat comes in. But that's a true detriment. They can get depressed. They can get lonely. I can't tell you how many elderly I dealt with in that home care, that the fact that they had a caregiver coming in and changed their life because they didn't feel lonely anymore. So that's just one aspect of it. But number two, if you don't have that right plan, exercise. We talked about exercise there. As one ages and depending upon what one is predisposed to or what is manifest itself out of, I was probably predisposed to osteoarthritis. My sports activities probably kicked that up. So probably the epigenetic aspect of it probably brought it to fruition there.
When you say epigenetics, what do you mean?
Yeah, so epigenetics is there. So you may have something say I'm predisposed to this from gene factor in the family, but it doesn't always have to. You don't always have to be ruled by your genes. Sometimes there's an environmental factor that triggers them and kicks them off, and that's the epigenetics. And so in my case, it was probably damage from the wrestling and the martial arts on there. But so what do you?
And by the way, a future episode on the WellWaveNOW show, so pay attention to when that one airs.
Yeah. So what you have to do in that case, and with that understanding, you then need to adjust your exercise. So I don't go out and I never was going to become, but I wouldn't even fathom it, become a marathon runner like Breck. I didn't want to put that amount of stress, on my knees as they started to kick in on it. So then, I started doing swimming some more. And still today, I will swim versus do other activities. There's certain types of resistance training I won't do because I don't want to put the extra stress on the joints. So you've got to have that modification, or you got to have that modification over time. And so that ties back into, so what happens if you don't understand, if you don't do the planning, you don't adjust, You can destroy your joints. You can destroy your social life. You can expose yourself to to really very serious diseases like heart disease and diabetes, manifesting themselves and coming to fruition for you.
Yeah, I just want to make the comment. We talked a lot in other shows about this concept of a multimodal approach to conditions. Multimodal meaning we combine several modalities, several therapeutic approaches into a protocol that is then implemented with the patients. I think that the same thing applies to wellness planning because a unimodal approach, a single mode therapy, like I use my if I was an example and I said I'm going to live to way beyond 120, let's say, by using exercise. All I do is exercise. Okay, I may have the worst diet in the world. I may have the worst relationships. I may be unhappy, whatever. That's not going to be very effective, right? So it takes a multimodal approach to the wellness planning. Like,
Absolutely.
and you brought it
Absolutely.
up already, Tim. You were
Yeah.
talking about the different categories that people need to deal with. And that's probably something that we should do at some point is we could actually dig in and create a template.
That's right. That's what I did with people and do for myself. It really is. It's a look at. So and it's part of that base. So, for example, part of the baselining portion, right, is I do encourage people if they haven't, if someone was working with me, I wanted to know, well, how recently have you been to your doctor? If you haven't been to your doctor and have that checkup, then let's get that in the first part of this baselining. So, what are you looking for there? You're looking for some of the standard stuff. Do they have inflammation in the body? And so some in that there are two or three type. There are a couple of tests that I like to see on the inflammation, maybe three. One is and you do have to ask for these primarily versus they're not using the standard ones. One is say it's C-reactive protein, which is the general measure of inflammation within the body. But then they have it's a highly sensitive, also known as heart C-reactive protein that will look to see where's it around for your cardiovascular disease. Then there's another one that's called the SED rate, which is the how quickly does something settle in your body. So that's another indication of inflammation. But so you can look at see what's the inflammation in the body. You're also looking for vitamin deficiencies. You're also looking, of course, at those other things we've debated on the cholesterol, triglycerides. But with that, then you can start taking that multimodal approach. What's the exercise? For example, some people believe you can't really raise HDL. I've shown you can raise HDL, and that's by certain types of exercise alone. You can raise
I've
the.
done that too. I've done that too. Yeah, it works.
So so then you start looking at that's where you start honing on what's your point, Bob. What's the real multimodal approach? That starts giving you keys to what do you want to do from a diet standpoint, keys to what do you want to do from an exercise standpoint, and that factors into there, and you can really start bringing together that along with other things. Then it gets into people's also their interest. Yeah, if you have no interest in swimming and never swimming and wouldn't even try it, then you got to find something else.
Right.
If you have no interest in weightlifting, well, you can still there's other types of resistance training that you can do. So you combine that with the baseline of where to start with, along with people's interests and what they're open to, and you work from there.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Brett. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to just compliment Tim on the swimming. That's got to be one of the better low impact exercises that anyone can do because you're exercising so many muscles, including your lungs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then you weigh about well, Tim, instead of weighing about like 195, Tim probably weighs like 40 pounds in the water. We all do. We
Right. Right.
very
That's
little.
right. That's right. So you get that lessens the blood on the joints, and sometimes you're not even putting any pressure on the joints on it. And then number two, even when people will say some people with certain types of arthritis will say even the full swimming is too difficult for me. Well, then they also need to look at, and this just gets back, we got to circle back to your point, your question, Bob, on good resources. And why that brought that up. Well, a lot of people don't realize that the Arthritis Foundation has a hot water program and even has pools that are designated for hot water. So that's even easier on people with various forms of arthritis to be able to get into the pool and take the weight off of their joints and exercise and do things.
I teach proper walking in the pool for people because instead of weighing, if their body weight's 230, they in the water, if they're up to their chest in water, they weigh like 30 pounds or something like that. So it's taking all the pressure off the joints. I wanted to bring up just some general categories. We talked about this multimodal aspect of things. And we've already talked about like exercise. What are the kinds of exercises that people are going to do? We got the food intake plan. What's a good food intake plan? There's like a million of those. So
Oh,
getting
that's multimodal as well, right? You could get a superfood like blueberries, which I love, but if I were living off blueberries, I wouldn't live very long.
right, exactly. So you got to have a decent food intake plan. So you got to talk to somebody or get resources to advise on that. If somebody's into taking supplements, and there are probably some decent supplements that are worth taking depending on somebody's profile. There's a supplement strategy. Then you've got stress. I mean, how do people de-stress, right? Then you got people's future visioning. Do they think they're okay? Do they think they have a chance of getting better from something? Can they really live a long time? Then you got the happiness component, the socialization. And there's a lot more factors. Those are just some. And so how do we put all, Tim, you're an expert in this. How do we put all that together?
Well, what you do is again, it starts from your goal, starts from your baseline. Then from that baseline, you can prioritize things. You can say, hey, my body fat composition is 12 and I'm 40 years old, and that's a good body fat composition for a non-professional athlete at 40 years old. So I don't need to work on that. But say, look, I've looked and I've seen that I'm not I have no friends, and that really bothers me. I'm not a hermit. So you start to prioritize that, and then you just lay out your plan. So you say, hey, look, you review what they're doing on that exercise and their eating. You say, I'm not that body fat. And you say, boy, I'm good there. So keep for now, keep doing what you're doing there. We got to adjust that by age over time, but let's really then work on your socialization, your connections. Do you like church? Do you like plays? Is there a group you can go to? Is there a library group? What things do you want? Are you smart and you like Tai Chi versus yoga? So let's get you let's get you
Put that pig in there.
so that's how you start doing. You start breaking it down. Is what do I need to maintain? What do I need to work on? And then it becomes key, just like in anything. Nothing really happens unless you do two, or it happens, but you don't get successful at it unless you do two things. Then you've got to schedule it. You've got to get it on there, and that's part of your planning. Okay, I'm gonna join a Bible class, and I'm gonna find one, and you put on there, I'm gonna find Bible class by April 2025. Attend it once a week. Find Tai Chi class. Attend. I'm going to go to twice a week, and you lay that out and you work towards that, and then you monitor it. Have I really found one? Have I really gone and adjust it? And you sort of measure. You come up with I even came up with a happiness index for people.
Cool.
I didn't call it happiness at the time, Bob. I've renamed it for you.
Thank you. But it was essentially monitoring that.
It was monitoring that. It was like a social connection index that I had,
But the thing that blows my mind, or Tim and
Mhm.
Breck, is food.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know where people go to find out the best information about food. And when you go to the grocery store and you watch what people are buying, and when you watch what's displayed, when it's displayed and it's prominently positioned in the store, people are buying it. And there's some really nasty stuff out there.
Absolutely. So
Uh-oh.
I could get political here. I'm getting semi-political with you two. You two would say phone RFK Jr. and he'll give you the scoop on it. So
He's a knowledgeable guy. He's a smart guy.
yeah, that kind of
Even if somebody hates him, he's a smart guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what do in school, American education, who knows what it's like these days? My son came out, he was all right. It used to be, I think, very, very good, and hopefully still is. I haven't checked on it. Why do I go down this path? Is because I remember my high school English teacher, Elmer Crawl. There's a name for you.
Yeah.
And Elmer was the one that talked about, how do you look at your resources? How do you check your resources? How do you vet them? How do you find good resources? How do you know they're good? So in each one of these areas, right, Bob, that you want to know about nutrition. Well, you know that registered dietitians are supposed to be to the extent of where they can even look at that and help you identify foods that can help you cure diseases. Well, some of this is, I mean, just find a good registered dietitian. If I can't afford a good registered dietitian, then I've got to know, okay, National Institute, where else could I go? What's a good library? What's a good library book to pick out? I go to the National Institute of Health and look up things and balance that and look at a couple of ways. And so there's even and I was only partially kidding when I mentioned WellWaveNOW earlier, because if you go back to it, we haven't hit everything yet, but that's what we put out on our mission. And we've had a very good supplementation person on. We've got a couple people coming up for herbal medicine and coming up for food as medicine. We've done that exercise as medicine piece on there. So hopefully, so people should listen to us and follow the old Ronald Reagan philosophy, which was trust but verify. So go find out. Hey, I listened to this on these guys, but let me check some other sources. Does this really make sense? And are these guys really, really that good? But a lot of those things we've laid out, we've given people resources so they can contact these resources we've had up there, and we've given them starting points on it as well.
Yeah, in fact, we encourage our listeners to reach out to some of the experts we've had on.
Absolutely. And I think some of the best advice that we could actually give our audiences is to explore, verify. I like what you said about that. It's really about because how do I evaluate a nutritionist, as the average person? How do I do that? So I need to rely on, what are their references like? What is their social media like? What do they have out there that we can evaluate to tell? Because, when I was looking for an orthopedic surgeon for my hip replacements 8 years ago, it's like, I mean, I'm not an orthopedic surgeon, so I know kind of what questions to ask, but what does the average person know, which is even less than me? So you really got to rely on. So I basically interview those surgeons and use my best judgment, listen to them, and it's amazing when you do that, when you get the guts going. Like, I'm going to talk to these people, I'm going to ask questions, I want them to explain to me why they're the right person. You really got to be your own advocate and go out there and find out information. So I just want to say people need to search for really good quality information. And WellWaveNOW has some of the best, actually.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you 100%, Bob. Mike. And we've got a question from the audience, but I want to add one thing before I forget, and before we go to that question, which to me, a key component that everybody should have on the team and can get some coverage for one way or another is a very, very good primary care doctor.
And that's a challenge too.
Because and I've really vet my, and it's yeah, and it's what's their philosophy? Then you can look at the ratings and other things. But part of me told me the one I have now, I felt she was very good. But I went for my colonoscopy, and I was with that doctor, and the nurse over there says, "Oh, you've got Dr. So and so." I said, "Yes." She said, "Don't let her go. She is fantastic. She's fantastic." And I heard that from various sources. So, but what I did, I went into it with that intent. I said, I understand that they can't spend as much time with you as they used to. We just had, the dean of University of Michigan saying, that's one of the things that he knows that has changed in the medical world. And then his next phase, what he wanted to do was kind of take an approach as part of this part of his career of being able to spend more time actually out there working and done that. But I understood that you could take less time, but I wanted someone who had a philosophy of getting involved with their patients. I wanted someone who had to match what I was trying to do, which is integrative. Another word for your integrative or your multimodal, Bob, is integrative approach, right? Believes that food has an impact, believes that exercise has an impact, and all things of that nature. And so when I went for my
like psychology and spirituality and all kinds of things.
So when I had my first meeting with her and she was screening me, I looked for where they asked me those questions. Did I exercise? What did I like eating? What was it like? To confirm that what they had on the site was there. And I had my conversation with her in that way. So now she's a trusted, if you get a couple of good, knowledgeable, trusted resources, they then can help you find and vet the rest of them. So I go to her and I asked her about, there's this rage about DHEA and what that can do for people and linking the telomeres in the body. What do you think about it? And she gives good thoughts on it. But I've rambled on here for a little bit. So Harvey, you have a question?
Come off mute.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, listening to you guys, the WellWaveNOW, the podcast, and you want to be healthcare disruptors. What are you disrupting? If you go back to the MDs and the National Institute of Health and other things that you've mentioned.
That's actually the next segment. So thank you for that segue. For definitely for sure. Dr. Bob, you had a comment?
Well, I just wanted to say that we're healthcare disruptors because when we look at the uh, health statistics and how I'm just going to use the word pathetic the United States is in terms of our status in the world, where we spend more than everybody else combined practically on healthcare, and we have some of the worst healthcare statistics. So that needs to be disrupted.
And that isn't going to change.
Right.
Guys, I've been doing this since 1976.
Doing what?
Functional medicine, energy medicine. I've been fixing people.
Great,
That's
super.
what I fix them.
For
But
sure.
you're not going to get anybody fixed sending them to the NIH.
I disagree. I disagree with you, Harvey, and let me
Okay.
preface it from the following standpoint. The healthcare a lot in this in our society does exactly what it's meant to was established to do. That's diagnose, treat. I don't think you have to throw that away. So there are places to go back to there. There, it has its place. It has its information, and it has good information for some things. Yes, to your point, and I love that you came on. Love this conversation. Love this conversation. You've never heard us say don't do functional medicine. We never heard us say don't
Oh,
look.
sure, we never said that.
You've heard Bob say multimodal. So, so
You go to your local friendly MD, and he's going to tell you, "Oh no, they're going to like they do with chiropractor." And I'm not a chiropractor. I was doing neuroscience before they even called it neuroscience.
You must be older.
I wrote an article in 1991 connecting the gut and the brain. I'm not new to this, guys. I've been around.
Yeah, but you've been on with this before.
But you got a system that is designed to treat systems.
Yeah, it's
symptoms.
sick care.
You go there and say, why did you need your heart valve replaced? What caused that?
Yeah.
What was the purpose? And the biggest thing that causes it is the emotional part, which is never going to be addressed by the MDs because they don't have a pill to give you.
Oh, Harvey, I think you're
We're on the same page. I don't know, Harvey, where you're coming from.
Hold on, Bob. Yeah,
I'm just listening.
Bob, Harvey, I think you're painting. You're totally ignoring one part that I just went through about 5 minutes ago. You're painting all the MDs with a broad swath. You got to find the ones. Mine that I searched out and that I work with. She's not like that. And in fact, there's been a couple of times here recently. She said, past couple of years, she said, Tim, I'm not going to prescribe a medication for this. You can address this from lifestyle. Said you always talk about lifestyle. You need to change your lifestyle and address this. And I did, and it was addressed.
How long has she been practicing?
She's been practicing. I'll bet you she's been practicing. I'm going to guess. Never asked her age, but I'm telling you, looking at it, I think she's been practicing about at least 35 years, if not more.
Well, she's a smart one. A lot of these young guys are saying, I can't do this.
Yeah. And there's a very good one more break, then there's a very good concierge doctor in Greenwich, Connecticut. And she said, look, I didn't, and this isn't the one I go to, but she said, look, I was one of the first ones to start talking to my patients about plant-based, and now this is all the rage. And so they're out there, Harvey. There are ones that are, they may not have been trained in medical school on this, but they've realized themselves these other things, and they've gone to work on it. And so it's incumbent upon us as individuals to know who we're dealing with, who our care providers are, and choose the right ones.
And if you find a person like that, you should hang on to them.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys who call themselves functional medicine docs, they take a course and they think that they give you a vitamin.
Yeah.
Because they don't realize that all disease comes from inflammation. And if you don't treat the inflammation, you're going to get the person well. And you can only treat the inflammation. It really is just that simple.
True. Hey, Harvey, that's not true.
Prove me wrong.
You're saying the only way you can treat inflammation is through nutrition. That's just not true.
All right. But how do you say that?
If somebody has a high degree of stress and you don't treat that, that's going to be a problem for the person. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You got to deal with both.
I love this conversation.
But you can treat it through food, nutrition.
My position is that you got to deal with the nutrition and the stress factors that mess people up, which are
and you have to do both.
Yeah, exactly.
And if your gut's inflamed, your brain is inflamed. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Now you can get people well, and way back when in the 80s, I did that. But there's too many toxins out in the world right now that you're breathing, you're eating, you're swallowing that keep you toxic.
That's
And that can affect their brains. I agree. You have to do both.
yeah, you
Yep.
do.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's going to be actually be a future episode of the WellWave Now show. And to your point, Harvey, we fully understand that the current U.S. system is a reactive health system, and that was a great segue into the next part that I wanted to get in feedback from Tim as a plan manager, healthcare plan manager here, is that how do we make that transition? And I'm going to preface that the transition or the pendulum swing from being reactive to a proactive health system. And I'm going to give you the praise we got earlier today, speaking to a cardiologist who practiced for I don't know how many 30 plus years, and now the dean of a medical school, giving us congratulations that our mission is to focus on preventative rather than reactive. So Tim, tell us
And
more
that's what
about
the
how we
whole
make
plan
that
is
switch.
about. And Harvey, I encourage you to go back, take a look at our site. So we, like I said, our intent is, I think there's a role for allopathic. You can find good allopathic, you keep those, and you go to Bob's side, and it's multimodal. I would call it multi-factor, and that's what the whole thing is about, being proactive. You take even your point, Harvey, about toxins. We did a series we did three-part things. You can do more. Three-part things on toxins, how to prevent them getting into you, how to minimize getting into them, how to address it in your home. So that's also part of the wellness planning factor in there, Bob and Brett. So how do you get proactive is just what we talked about. What do I want to achieve? What is my baseline? What is my environment? And you plan it out. You look at hey, I'm going to do a toxin review of my home. What products do I have? Take for example, my son knows his wife switched him from a certain deodorant because I forget what was in it, a copper or something to something else. So you got to review your whole life on that and plan it out. But also the key to me is, as has come through from our wellness heroes, and we also want to make this achievable for people. You don't have to, and as I've seen as I plan and help folks do this, you don't have to be perfect in everything.
Right.
You can do enough of the various factors, and enough small things, a number of small things add up to make a big impact. You go back to our movement snacking, Bob. If you stop sitting, if every hour you plan on getting up and you move around,
Smart.
that adds up.
As long as you can lessen the burden, the
Yeah.
body burden.
Yeah,
Right.
sure. Hey, Harvey,
Huh?
Harvey, you make some great points, and it's really great to have you on here. I just want to say that it's really nice to have you here and your expertise.
And I also like Harvey's interactions. Like one person we had on one time says, you guys are getting theoretical here. I've got some real problems. So it's good to always have the challenging to get into the real
Right.
problems.
Because when you deal with patients, you're dealing with real problems.
That's right.
Harvey, my PhD's in pharmacology. I know more about drugs than most medical doctors because they don't get very much in medical school.
You're right. They get very little. Having gone to pharmacy school myself, you're right.
That's
And,
right. And so they also
one last thing I want to say is that there's never been a drug invented that addresses the underlying source of an illness. And I've lectured to hundreds and hundreds of physicians, and I say that every time, and nobody's ever questioned me. There's never been a drug invented that addresses.
They don't have one.
They're Band-Aids. Nothing exists.
But here's the thing, guys. If you have an MD and he doesn't prescribe medication, they're going to come after his license. Now, RFK may help change that. Probably not in our lifetime.
I hope you're wrong.
Why?
Because I want everything to change fast in our lifetime. If we're going to migrate from sick care to health care, and we're going to figure out how to do preventative care, and help at the same time help all these sick people get healthy, it's going to take.
What are you going to do with the drug cartel?
Okay, we'll have that for what we can have a debate on that one. But what I would say again is I think maybe if you had an MD that didn't prescribe a single medication to a single patient, maybe they come off their license. But I will say again, and I go from my personal, I've had many doctors because I actually started to look for them differently since I've matured and changed and added over time. But even going back to my days at the University of Chicago, when I found doctors coming out of that system, I've had many of them who, for me personally, as interactive one, that medication was their last resort and not their first resort for me. That's why I don't have any medications at all today.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on that, even the best intention of a physician wanting to move away from that still is taking care of patients. And you're always going to have that patient who wants the symptom masked.
Yeah.
They're always going to be there. So even if the doctor wants to go a different route, they're saying, no, I want the easy route out, doc. Give me something that's going to make the symptom go away.
You're right. They want the easiest, quickest, fastest.
Yep.
And that's another thing to address when you start talking about the psychological,
Yep.
because that's something that's ingrained in their brain.
That's why I like
reducing stress is part of that, psychological, reducing the stress. And how does the care plan that you put together, Tim, help reduce the stress
Well, then it gets back to we'll go Harvard, like functional.
Yep.
What is causing the stress in their life? Is it work? Is it they do have something, they've got joint problems, and that is throwing so much stress into their life on how you deal with it and say, no, I live with it. You have to identify with them help them identify what's the source of that stress and help them figure out effective strategies for dealing with that. Sometimes, sometimes for some people it's music can relieve the stress. Sometimes it's reading for people. Sometimes it's socializing.
I got to jump in here as a stress expert. I got to jump in here.
Go ahead, Bob.
All stress is internally generated. It's simply a reaction to external or internal thoughts, but it's a reaction to circumstances, whether they're internal thoughts, and how we think about things in reaction to circumstances. And so it's internal stress is always internally generated. There's no such thing as externally generated stress. There's triggers out there, but we're the ones who are reacting, right? Somebody who has no problem flying in an airplane, they love flying, and other people won't get on an airplane, because of the stress factor from how they react to the word airplane, So all I want to say is that
I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with you, Bob. It is internally generated. It is a returnal reaction, but I still like to identify what are those triggers, and then they know how. Then you can help them deal. Then you can help them deal with it. If it's getting up on, some people can get up on stage and not have anxiety or stress about it. Others do. Well, what's causing that? Why are you reacting that way to it? It also goes back to our philosophy. What sort of Mort Orman, the guy eliminating anger, talked about, says, what are those filters, and are they true, and how do you deal with it, and you address it right there. So I don't disagree with it that they're internally generated. It's an internal reaction, but there are external stimuluses, and it's how do you address that internal. At least how I work with some people.
Interrupt the automatic pattern that's why I love guided meditation or hypnotherapy or guided visualization, whatever you want to call it. I love that because it's all about reprogramming the subconscious mind, all of the automatic patterns that exist. And that's why, and Harvey, that's along with nutrition, interrupting automatic stress reactions is really vital. In fact, interrupting all the automatic patterns that people have around eating is really important too. And that's why I love helping people reprogram their subconscious mind. And I'm going to end it there. And I'm going to have to jump off, unfortunately, in the next couple of minutes, guys.
I've got to go to.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad we had this little talk. I think there's a lot of things out there. Yeah.
Hey, listen, we have hope.
Yeah, come on back anytime, Harvey, and put your questions out there and put the challenges out there, and we'll just as I handle Bob's challenges, we'll handle your challenges, and people will benefit. Absolutely.
So, have a good debate. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Harvey. So I love the banter and the discussion we've had here, but it's always important to at least towards the end of our show, let's talk about a success story, right? Can you give us a personal story of someone that you've really helped transform their health?
Well, I'll take one person in particular. There've been several, but I'll take one. A woman who actually, I didn't even realize that you could have this. That this is that had Hashimoto's disease, but you could also have Graves, so that you could have both, and it could fluctuate between the two, have a hypo and a hyper. I didn't realize she could go that far. Really affecting her, affecting with the pain, the enjoyment of life, and moving around with it. So what did we do on that one? Establish just what we talked about. Here's what you're experiencing. How do you get there? What's the underlying approach to this? And like many of our wellness areas, people have said, you really, here's some, we've given you what we can drug wise, and nothing else is going to work on this one. We looked at several modalities. Actually got her into Tai Chi. She was doing Tai Chi and got her doing more of that. Tai Chi is medicine effect on the body. Got her into PEMF, along with PEMF, red light right on the thyroid. Worked with her physicians on it, and also got her. And this is one that also got her using what's called the structured water, which is supposed to have inflammation in the body, better oxygenation, what breath takes. All those things together, and the amount of the fluctuation, the amount of pain she had, the fatigue, leads here in 5-6 years later, leads a very, very vibrant life by really looking at that and work. So establishing those goals, making the incremental changes, investing in them, multidiscipline, multimodal approach to things.
Excellent. So I know we're running short on time. Two things I want to accomplish. First off, give our listeners that are only listening to the audio and not to the YouTube your contact information, how to get in contact with you, Tim.
Easiest way is tim@wellnesswaveclub.com as an email.
Okay, perfect. And then would you walk us through then how someone can put their own plan together? Obviously, you coach and help with that, but what are the steps for someone putting their own wellness plan?
I went through it. It's again, just take a look at your goals. Get yourself a baseline, which is have you had a physical recently? And I still say you go back to that allopathic person because they've got something to add to it and help you get those tests. Look at establish your baseline from your physically standpoint, examine your social environment, look at those components. Decide, just figure out yourself what's having the biggest impact on you right now. Is it that 60 pounds overweight and that's causing inflammation, putting stress on my body? Is it the fact that I don't have any friends and I feel lonely and I feel depressed and that's leading to certain things on it? And so with that, then just plan out, identify that biggest priority area for yourself and just start taking some incremental actions on it and measure on it. And forgive yourself if you fall off that plan. There's one thing is if you get disrupted, big deal. It's just start again the next day and keep working on it, build up on it.
So wouldn't it be an advantage though, having somebody that is checking up on that progress, not just yourself, but a coach?
It can be, and call Dr. Bob on that, especially for stress, because he's an expert on that. Sure, you can have some people need. I was about to say it's advantageous probably for everybody to have a coach. If they need one, can afford one, have it, right? Even elite athletes have coaches, right? Sometimes they hire personal coaches to do things with them.
Olympic athletes, everybody who's a high performer has got a coach.
Yeah. Yep. So certainly you can find yourself a coach to help with that and help structure it. But I also will say, don't necessarily wait to start making some changes for that, right? You look around, find a coach that fits with you, your affordability, your philosophy, what you're trying to achieve. But at the same time, if you can just do your right research, we've talked about how you do your research. Find one area, start making some incremental changes even on your own as much as you can as you search for that right resource that works for you.
Okay. Is there anything that because I know we're running completely out of time here, is there anything you really wanted to cover on today's show that we didn't get to yet, Tim?
No, I think we covered the sort of wellness planning 101. What is it? Why do it? What are the benefits of it? What are the the problems that you have if you don't do it? And so I think we're good.
Okay. Well, if our listeners are ready to take control of your own wellness, please visit the WellWaveNOWclub.com. Also, Tim's email is tim@thewellnesswaveclub.com. Did I say that wrong the first time? Wellnesswaveclub.com to explore more about this topic and also in order to get in contact with Tim. Next week, we will have an MD, a cardiologist on that will be here visiting with us. Looking forward to that discussion next week. And do we have a specific area that we're going to focus on?
He's going to talk a little bit about precision medicine. He's done a wide range of work, been a thought leader in a number of areas. He's going to talk about precision medicine as part of that genetic testing for both from a cardiologist standpoint and probably also from a neurology standpoint, and how that lends itself precise in how you address things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us today, Tim. It's great to have you be the expert today, and always great to be with you as well, Dr. Bob. And I hope all of our listeners stay curious out there about wellness. And remember, wellness, it's in you.